Good. My name is Vimal Thomas. I am the Vice President of Information Technology at Yamaha Corporation of America. Yamaha Corporation of America is based in Buena Park, California, which is just about 3 hours and 45 minutes drive from here. I know because I drove here. What we do at Yamaha is we sell, we are a sales and marketing subsidiary of Yamaha Corporation in Japan. We sell musical instruments, large-scale recording devices for concert halls and things like that. And we also sell the home theater equipment. I've been with Yamaha for now 27 years, and I've been managing the IT for Yamaha for the last 14 years. That's my background. I'll hand over to Chris so he can give an introduction of himself.
Hello, my name is Chris Bleaser. I'm founder and Chief Technology Officer of Second Watch. And we're a business partner of Amazon's that help enterprises move into the cloud and then manage their workloads once they're there. And so we'll talk a little bit further along in the process after Vimal talks about what they're trying to accomplish from a business perspective. We'll talk more about the migration itself, talk about some of the issues that we ran into, and also talk about secrets to success in terms of migrating large applications and data centers into the cloud.
Thank you, Chris. Please excuse my voice. I'm recovering from a cold, so I have a little bit of a sore throat and my voice is a little hoarse. So let me describe what how we got onto this, how we got into AWS. Let me explain what our business problem was. We had an infrastructure. YCA, which is Yamaha Corporation of America, the IT at YCA is about 20 people in total, and that includes me, who cannot do anything on servers. So there are a total of 20 people and about 6 people in the infrastructure group. And we had a server infrastructure that included about 200 servers with running various applications, including Oracle EBS. So what was going on was that we had a practice of only leasing all of our hardware. So we leased our hardware for 30 months apiece. So we had 200 servers running on maybe about 80 physical servers, and those had to be replaced every 30 months. And so what would happen is that as soon as we had finished replacing a couple of servers, we would have to start work on replacing the next 2 servers. And so what was going on was that we had one person completely dedicated from our infrastructure group just replacing servers. And that wasn't the only thing. We also had to worry about keeping all those servers patched and ready from a security perspective as well. So managing that infrastructure had become so much of a problem that we decided that wasn't enough. We didn't have enough resources. We couldn't just keep adding resources to manage that infrastructure. So we had to do something about it. And so what we decided, we had to take a look at what could we do with our infrastructure. And so for that, we had to first describe what would an ideal infrastructure for YCA look like. And the success criteria we defined was that we would have to be able to rapidly deploy applications as the request came in from the business group. And we had to lower IT costs, so we couldn't buy overcapacity and have it sitting there so that we could deploy applications as and when needed. So we had to have lower IT costs, and we had to deploy most of our resources into focusing on new business initiatives. So this was a goal that we had created for ourselves and sold to the executive management at YCA, that YCA's IT would focus its resources 70% on rolling out new initiatives and 30% on day-to-day maintenance tasks. So from an infrastructure perspective, what were our options? The options we had were, we could outsource all of system administration, and we did try that. We actually sent out an RFP to a bunch of people and told them we had these many servers. What you're supposed to do is go ahead and provide us a service to manage these servers on a daily basis, from patching all the way up to replacing the hardware as they came up on lease. And we got back responses from them, and first the solution was too expensive. It was just too expensive for us to bear. The second problem with that was we were still left with the infrastructure problem, which means we still had all of the same constraints that we had before, which was we still had our on-premise systems, and we still had our on-premise on-premise servers at the data center. So all of the risks that were associated with it still stay with us. The other option was to go ahead with a hosted service provider and go ahead and have them set up dedicated servers for us and do the system administration and also handle the hardware risk of it, part of it. Did not solve our infrastructure problems. It still had the same constraints because we would still have to purchase overcapacity to be able to do rapid deployment. So the third option that we had was to look at cloud options, where what we really wanted to do, what we really could achieve was a variable infrastructure cost. So we wanted to be built for infrastructure like we would for, say, electricity, that is on an hourly basis. So those were the options, and so the decision that came down to is the first two options were not good. They would not solve our problems. So we decided to look at cloud options, and we sent out RFPs to many different companies that said they do cloud, and finally chose Amazon Web Services, the cloud infrastructure, and Second Watch, the company that to help us do the migration and support of our cloud infrastructure. So there were two key initiatives that were outlined in this particular initiative. That was the infrastructure migration and to decommission our data center. We had a data center. We have a data center in Irvine hosted by AT&T that was hosting all of our servers. The RFP itself was issued back in August of 2013, and Second Watch was selected to help with the migration in November of 2013. So the criteria that we used for selecting partners was first off, we had to have the company that we chose to, or the partner we chose, had to have knowledge, a very in-depth knowledge about the AWS environment. They had to have a quality engineers and project management staff that had the capability to help us with the migration. And the third criteria, which was self-imposed, they had to meet the aggressive schedule we had. So why did we have that aggressive schedule? We had, what we chose to do, and we do this on a periodic basis just to test ourselves. We were running a Oracle EBS environment. That was at version 11.5.10. So we were going to do an upgrade to release 12, and that was going to go live in July of 2014. And before we went live in July of 2014, we needed to have all of our infrastructure moved into Amazon. So those of you who have tried it, you know, moving infrastructure, whether it's into Amazon or anywhere else, involves your application group, basically to be able to test applications as they're going to be moved, and it involves infrastructure group because they are the ones who are going to move it. And when you do an R12 upgrade to your ERP, it involves the application group because they are the ones who are going to do that, and it involves infrastructure group because they are the ones who set up the infrastructure to be able to do an upgrade. So these are two massive projects that were launched at the same time. And I'm happy to say we went live with both of them. And Second Watch was the partners that we studied. They had the capability, they actually had the mix of all three of those criteria that we specified. And they were not fazed by the fact that they had to complete all of this in about 8 months. And the second piece of that was they also had a managed services offering, because once you move into AWS, it's not like our own staff had all of the expertise necessary to be able to continue doing infrastructure management in a completely new environment like AWS. So we had to have a partner who had the experience to keep the infrastructure that we put in there running. So those were the two key reasons why we picked Second Watch as our partner. Now I'm going to have Chris come up and explain what process and methodology was used to help Yamaha with the migration into AWS. Chris?
Thank you, Vimal. We certainly appreciate being a part of this particular project. I want to talk a little bit about the process involved, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about what we migrated and how it was migrated. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that. Second Watch really has a proven methodology around how to migrate applications into the cloud. So we call this our Cloud Migration Management Methodology, so CM3 for short. And it's really just a best practice around how to migrate enterprise data centers into the cloud. And so I want to double click on it just for a little bit. In terms of the assessment phase, this is really key when you're moving data sets and workloads and data centers into the cloud. You really need to understand the application dependencies, what you have to do from a migration perspective, understanding what workloads need to move when, which ones are reliant on different ones for data integration, those kinds of things. So we really spend that time in the assessment phase categorizing our applications. So being able to create buckets of applications in terms of which ones can go first, which ones are core infrastructure, which ones require others to operate effectively, which ones can work in a hybrid mode. And so that particular phase is very, very important. That bleeds into the plan itself in terms of how do we put together a migration plan, how do we talk about which phases go when. In this particular case, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but it was a very phased approach in terms of doing development, testing, and then production to make sure that we had everything squared away. It was very methodical because we wanted to make sure that there was no user impact around the migration as well. Then we move into design phase. This is where we develop both a high-level design. I'll show you an example of one of those for the environment. And then also a detailed level design, which is sort of an as-built document that we use to document the settings and the configuration that we've done on top of AWS. Also a part of design phase is the cost analysis. So cost analysis for us is really about, now that we've designed it, now that we've figured out what sizes of instances we're going to use, those kinds of things, how much is it going to cost to run the environment on an ongoing basis. Then we move into, obviously, the implementation. How do we move? So we'll talk a little bit about how that works and some of the things that we used. A little more details here in just a minute. And then also, obviously, the sanity checks and testing that goes into place to make sure that we're ready to actually cut over. And then as we cut over and move, we shift into the management phase and really talk about the SLAs that are important for the customer to run. In this particular case, this was a production data center, so we wanted to make sure that we had the correct SLAs to support the critical Yamaha applications that we're running. And Vimal will talk a little bit more later in the presentation about the particular applications that we're running in the environment. Again, in terms of the phases that we went through for Yamaha, really assessing and building that project plan for the migration. Here we used a lot of tools to automate and migrate service, so we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute, making sure that we have accurate backup and DR strategies, and then testing for performance against baseline to make sure that we've got the right instance sizes and things as we go forward. So in terms of assessment and design, this is really the critical phase of the project. You want to really get an understanding of the environments, the applications. This particular diagram is just an example of one of the environments that we moved in terms of the Yamaha data centers. And it's important to understand here that you really need to understand what are the application dependencies, which applications rely on which infrastructure to be up and running. And so it's really spending a lot of time with the folks in the business understanding, okay, how do we work with these applications, which ones have to be in place before others, really determining how we design that. And then really taking that and blowing that into what services are we using on Amazon. So when is it appropriate to use S3 for object storage? When is it appropriate to use certain instance types? Do we use RDS for different environments? Those kinds of things. So we go through a design factor and phase to make sure that we're using the right components. And then we put together the diagram you're seeing there, which then morphs itself into sort of an as-built document to document what it is we're doing. In this particular migration, it was a heavy Windows environment. So the bulk of the systems, about 77% of the systems were Windows-based. A lot of Windows 2003, obviously. Exchange and SharePoint. We'll talk a little bit more about this here in a second. On the Linux side, Oracle environment, large transactional databases. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the issues that come up when you move those types of systems. When you're moving a big data center with lots of applications, you need to be careful that you can move these things without downtime or without data loss. And so there's lots of things you do to make sure that those things don't happen. From a production data center migration perspective, I would just want to share some stats to help you guys understand what goes into these sorts of things. So from a physical server perspective, there were 64 physical servers that were part of the move in 10 different environments. Again, a heavy mix of Windows, but a decent amount of Linux as well. The actual migration itself was over several months. And the majority of these were live migrations as much as possible. And so trying to limit the amount of downtime associated with the move itself. If you break that out into virtual servers, it's a little north of 200 virtual servers or so. And then I broke it into sort of dev test and production as well, based on some applications. So just to give you a sense of the sort of snapshot here in terms of the complexity of what you're dealing with when you're moving in phases, so dev test first, and then in production. So you really need to take care and build a really, work with the business and build a complete plan to make sure that you're not leaving anything behind. You're talking about all the different components and feature sets of the applications. And in this particular case, obviously you can see that it's going to vary based on the different environments. And so there was certainly a lot of testing and a lot of effort that went into place to make sure that the applications were going to work once we moved them. So I want to invite Vimal to talk a little bit about some of the applications and what they meant to Yamaha.
Thanks, Chris. So you see the list of apps that are there. Oh, those are all of our production applications. OBI is actually the Oracle Business Intelligence. That's our sort of like a data warehouse, but hooked up to our EBS system. Exchange is, of course, Exchange. That's our email system that was moved from on-premise also into AWS. Yamaha YCA, which Yamaha Corporation of America, does all of its business through dealers. We sell our products through dealers, so we don't sell directly to customers just yet. So Yamaha 24/7 is a B2B system, but we do sell parts online to end consumers. So it's a B2B and a B2C system, B2C for parts and B2B for all of our other goods. Control M is a system that runs that basically runs 24/7. It's a job scheduling system for our EBS. It runs all the jobs on EBS. So we have some more background on Yamaha. What we do, we are a sales subsidiary of Yamaha Corporation. All of the products that we have, that we sell, we import from countries like Japan, China, Indonesia, and Malaysia. So 99% of our products are imported. So we have EBS that handles our resource planning for outbound products, and Questa Web is the software that handles all of the inbound logistics. So customs clearance, classification of products, etc. All that is done through Questa Web. So I'll say that just so you get an idea of how important that software is for us. It's about as important as Oracle R12 is. The data warehouse, it's pretty obvious. It's the data warehouse. TIBCO, the two TIBCO applications that you see there, TIBCO OMS. TIBCO is essentially used as a middleware software for us to integrate between the various systems and our ERP. TIBCO OMS is the integration piece from 24/7 into Oracle, and TIBCO TM is the integration piece from our transportation management system, which is also in AWS, into our Oracle ERP. And of course SharePoint and our corporate website, which is yamaha.com. The system that you don't see in here is Oracle. Oracle ERP is not in AWS. It is still on-premise. So that is something we will plan on moving in the next couple of years. Chris?
So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges and some of the things that we came up with, and also we'll talk through some of the solutions that came about in terms of migrating such a broad set of applications and data centers into the cloud. A couple of high points here. Obviously, a lot of Windows 2003. For the most part, most of those we were able to use VM import to migrate those, and so for the most part, that worked successfully. Obviously, when you're dealing with databases and other systems, in a lot of cases, we would set up mirrors within AWS first. So that's pretty common in a data center move. You'd set up a mirror first, migrate the data, and that way there's a lot less downtime, potentially no downtime in moving the system. And so both the SQL Server and Exchange environments were environments where we could set up a system ahead of time, mirror them into the on-prem environment, and then migrate them. So that definitely helped. Some of the challenges around the Linux infrastructure are just different distributions of Linux and making sure that we had the right AMI within Amazon to support the workloads that we're moving. And so that's pretty typical. Just having to manage the disk layouts and make sure that those were set up ahead of time. Just manage that via scripting and some other tools that our engineers deployed to be able to make that happen. Another one I wanted to call out that's pretty interesting is just the timing around decommissioning the gear, because all these systems are integrated, and it's very common in enterprise data centers. You need to be very careful about the timing in terms of when you turn on gear in the new data center and when you turn it off in the old one, to make sure that the systems are writing into the right place, that things are working the right way. And so the dependency mapping and the timing is really, really key when you're doing a big migration like this. Another interesting data point with the Yamaha migration is there's quite a bit of raw data to move within the systems themselves. And so one of the things to keep in mind when you're doing data center migrations is how much actual disk or how much data on disk do you need to move. And in lots of cases, there were terabytes of data direct attached to servers or other things, whether it be databases or other things, file servers, that needed to be moved. And obviously, that takes a while to move into the cloud, and so just having a plan around that is helpful. We were using Direct Connect and a gigabit connection there, but not always were you getting that full bandwidth, and just having to plan around that and making sure that we had time to manage that connection was key. So just thinking about the fact that you're moving large sets of data was not uncommon for servers to have a terabyte or more of attached disk, and so just making sure you're planning for those things as you're moving into the cloud is key. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the managed services components as well, as this is sort of a key part of our business as well, as we support folks that are in the cloud. And one of the stories that I talk about in terms of managed services, as we cover the different areas, one of the things that's interesting about leveraging the power of Amazon and how you can do this. So in setting up disaster recovery for some of the transactional databases, we were able to use log syncing, those kinds of things, to keep them in sync and get them ready. But obviously the DR instance is not taking full load. The benefit of leveraging Amazon is that can cost you a lot less, right? So in the case of Yamaha, we're able to use sometimes instances as small as an M3 medium, which on the Linux side is like 7 cents an hour, depending on the AZ you're in, as opposed to a C3 8XL, which is like $1.68 an hour. So yeah, you're literally talking per server $1,000 a month in savings in terms of leveraging those smaller servers during DR and then turning them up into 8XLs at time of event. And so you can have a very, very quick time to recover and still save a lot of money in terms of a DR environment. And so those types of things are things that we can help do as part of managed services to support environments once they're in the cloud. I think the benefit of getting in Amazon is that once you're there, your data's there, you're using the services. Now you can optimize and use batch processing or use different instance sizes or timing or those kinds of things to take advantage of what AWS has to offer. So that was one particular story I wanted to share. We also do support Amazon enterprise support as well. So we have a third of a TAM that's available to Yamaha and Yamaha resources through Second Watch as well. So if you don't have enterprise support today through AWS, it's a great opportunity to get a hold of a direct resource. So highly recommend that. If you do a lot of Amazon or you're looking to do a lot, it's great to have a technical account manager assigned to you that you can ask questions to and really have a dedicated resource that does nothing but worry about your environment. And so here was an opportunity for us to pull forward that resource as well. And so we really appreciate the partnership with AWS and that we're able to offer that up as well. So I want to shift it back to Vimal to talk about sort of the outcome and where he's going next.
Thanks, Chris. So what was, so just to give you an idea of what we expect to gain from our move into AWS, what I promised our executive team is that we'll save our infrastructure cost by about $500,000 a year. That's a lot for us. $500,000 in savings, and that would come from reduced data center costs, hardware leasing costs, software and software support, and DR costs. And in addition, I'm not even counting in the cost savings of relieving one FTE from having to do hardware replacements. And we would be basically, you'll see in the later slides that we'll be rededicating our resources into other projects for Yamaha, and it contributes to our agility that we are able to now not have to dedicate all this time for replacing hardware. And the key piece to that also is that where we used to have to buy excess capacity and it would just sit around for 30 months as we continue to use it, now we don't have to do that. We can actually buy as we need. So I am able to actually tell my executive team that what we have, here is what our infrastructure costs by the hour, and by per day, our cost is this much. And that is huge. And to be able to say that is huge, we can actually manage it at that level too. Now so what's next for us? Our future strategy for YCA IT, Yamaha Corporation, which is based in Japan, has over 30 small sales subsidiaries around the world. And not all of them are the size of YCA. The two big subsidiaries, of course, are the ones in Europe and one in the US, that's us. but the rest of them are really small. Some of them are really small operations, but they're all exposed to the same threats. They all have the same IT needs that we do. So what we are planning to do now is that Yamaha Corporation in Japan has asked YCA, which is us, to help them with implementing IT across the world at the smaller subsidiaries. So we expect to have a presence in global IT, and what they're asking us to do is to create a global IT center of excellence in the US, which can then package these things and roll it out to the other subsidiaries around the world. From an applications perspective, we would be expected to take on more of the process and project management type activities, new business initiatives, rapid deployment of business initiatives, whether it's e-commerce or big data type projects. And so those are the two things that we expect to launch in the near future. For right now, we are expecting to take on do the same thing that we did in the US, in Canada and South America. So that's the next step for us as far as IT, as far as future is concerned. And with that, I think we'll bring it to a close and open it up for questions if you have any.